Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Yeah, I Said It. I want to wish all of you that are listening to the program early this morning, I want to hope all of you had a fantastic Thanksgiving. Currently, obviously, I'm doing this show for you. And when I finish the show, I definitely will be doing something that I hope that you guys are doing. I'll be having my first plate of Thanksgiving leftovers. So when I do the show, the year I said it on Friday at this time of the morning, I like to call it breakfast with Big Swa. Or if you're in the Eastern time zone, brunch with Big Swa. And I agree with you, Game Theory. I do agree with you. If you're in the live chat, you could see what Game Theory just typed. And before we get into the particulars of the show, and before I give you the title of the show, I want to give a big shout out to my co-host Jeff Hartman. Make sure you take a look at Jeff Hartman's Instagram One Fit Dad to see the fantastic job that Jeff did with the grilled turkey. I want to say big up to Dave Schofield, the Oracle, and big up to Who's Bad? Hashtag just take it, hashtag Mr. 2AM. And if you don't know what we mean by hashtag just take it and hashtag Mr. 2AM, you have to check out I believe it was the burning. It might not have been a burning question, but it was a show from a couple weeks ago. Famous, famous, famous. And I'm going to do it like what Jeff does sometimes when he starts the show. Is I want to ask people if you're on a live chat to tell me where you're from and where you're listening to the show from. So big up to Joey Franklin Jr. Looks like he's listening to the show in Rochester. Big up to Lee Willis, my North Side compadre from the North Side of Pittsburgh. North Sider stand up. Big up to Jer Devil from San Pedro. I'm sure it's nice and warm in San Pedro. And I'm not going to say how cold it is up here because it's not cold for most of the country. Big up to Damon Lodge from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Big up to Boo Bash from Gainesville. Big up to Ryan Kellerman from Dayton. Big up to the guy from Kentucky, Snowman from Newcastle. Big up to Mateo Cecilia from Buffalo, New York. Keyshawn Bannis from Miami, Florida. And I know it's great. Big up to Nap1963 on the treadmill in Johnstown, PA. Big up to all you guys out there listening to the program. If we have any servicemen out there or service women listen to the program, I want to give you guys a salute to service. You see I have my hoodie on. I want to thank you guys out there for the service that you do for this country. Hopefully you're bringing it safe and bringing it well. And Game Theory from LA. I used to live in Inglewood, California, from the wood, Inglewood up to no good. Big up to Felicia Ballard from Lake Charles. And she called me Mr. Hater. And I don't know if you guys check out the program from Thanksgiving. Me and Jeff may come up with a spin-off show of some sort called The Homer, Jeff, and the Hater, Me. But before we get into the program, I want to give a big shout out to the NFL for naming Joe Green to the NFL 100 all-time team. And not only did they name Joe Green to the NFL all-time team, Joe Green, if I'm not mistaken if I'm not mistaken this, he was named the first player to the NFL 100 all-time team. The first defensive player named to the team. And let me make sure. Let me make sure I take a look at the Steelers website real quick and make sure I verify that. I think that was. I think that's true. And let me read that. And let me read this here. It says that Joe Green. Yes, it says here that Joe Green was selected as part of the NFL's 100th season to the league. Has been counting down, and Joe Green was named the first defensive player to the team. And that's awesome. I don't know if you guys know, but Joe Green is my favorite player. I grew up during the Steel Curtain era. And so Joe is my favorite player. I mean, I love Joe Green. I mean, 75 was my guy. I mean, Joe Green, Joe Green was just my guy. That's that dude. When I think of the Steelers and I think of the steel curtain and I think of the black and gold, um, Joe Green was my guy. And thank you for confirming that, Ryan Kellerman. And that's right. Joe Green should be the first defensive player. Absolutely. Mean Joe. That's what being a Steeler is about. When I think of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think of the North Side, being from the North Side myself, being from Manchester. I think of the Roonies. I think of them being North Siders. But when I think of the players, man, I think of Joe Green first. That's my guy. Joe Green is my guy. And like Lee Pat said, Joe Green, aka the Foundation, aka Mr. Joe Green. That's what it is, aka Mr. Joe Green. And I'm never going to say that name without saying Mr. first, because Mr. Joe Green is a grown A man, A asterisk man. And the stories that my dad used to tell me about Joe Green, and my aunts and my uncles used to tell me about Joe Green playing football, and just how mean he was on the field, and how mean Mr. Joe Green was, and how good of a player he was. I mean, hey, Joe Green is that dude. Mr. Joe Green is the foundation of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But before we get into the program, the other thing I want to jump into is the injury report going into this game this week, because this game with the Cleveland Browns, in my opinion, is the most important game of the season. I think if they win this game on Sunday, because I mean, unfortunately, the Dallas Cowboys can't even do something for you when you need them to do something for you, and they got blasted by the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are 9-12 at this point, and I don't think they're not going to get the wild card, because they still play the Jets. I believe they play the Dolphins again. So even if they play the Dolphins, they get to 10 wins. And I think if a team gets to 10 wins, they're definitely getting the playoffs in this AFC. There's a lot of parity. So I think the Steelers, if the Steelers are going to make it to the playoffs, it's for that last 6 seed, that playoff spot in which they have right now. Looking at the injury report, this is from yesterday on Thanksgiving. Juju has a concussion in the knee and did not participate in practice. Artie Burns was limited with the knee. James Conner was limited with the shoulder. Alejandro Villanueva was a full participant in practice, and Ramon Foster did not participate. I suspect that was probably a rest day. It was not injury related, an NIR. And again, want to just let you guys know that Juju Smith-Schuster has been cleared from the concussion protocol, but he did not practice. Let me jump into the program, and let me give you the headline of the program. And it's simply this. Yeah, I said it. For the Steelers to take 2 steps forward, they must take 1 step back. And unless you've been under a rock, we're all aware that Devlin Duck Hodges, Duck Dynasty, has been named the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, when I say that you must take 2 steps forward, or 2 steps back to take 1 step forward, that has to do with Duck. Entirely has to do with Duck. We're talking about a guy in Duck Dynasty. We love the story, but we're talking about a guy that's attempted 40 passes. Let me say that again. Duck Dynasty has attempted 40 passes in his NFL career. And what I mean by saying taking 2 steps back to take 1 step forward is when you have a starter that's only completed 27 passes in his NFL career, a guy that's only thrown for 318 yards, 2 touchdowns, a QBR of 59.3, you can't depend on him to win you football games. It's sort of like what Mike Tomlin said, that the only thing you could depend on from Devlin Hodges is that he won't kill you. And maybe the stat that's the most important with Devlin Hodges, although he has thrown some balls and put some balls into harm's way that could have been intercepted, is that he has one interception. But this is a guy that has 7 completions in Heinz Field. And I know me and Jeff are really hard on Randy Fichtner, but how do you develop a game plan, an offensive game plan around a guy that's completed 7 passes in Heinz Field? Now, I'm not going to be a hypocrite about it. I was calling for Devlin Hodges to start. And it's to Mike Tomlin's overall point. I think Mason Rudolph hit a wall, so to speak. I think he was dealing with a lot of issues related to the Browns game. He's been turning over the football, and he just did not look confident. I think the players perceived that. You could see the body language from Mason Rudolph in and of itself. I just don't think he was a confident player. And I think the Steelers needed a spark, as Mike Tomlin described it, by putting in a loose cannon like a Devlin Hodges, a guy that has talked about this week that he has nothing to lose. And that is the appropriate perspective to take into this game. Sort of. Because the only thing that he can lose is the game if he doesn't play good football. But to his point, he's like, look, man, I'm Devlin Hodges. I'm Duck Dynasty. This is a great story. My NFL career could be very limited. This could be my only year. Because of that, I'm going to play loose. I'm going to play fast, and I'm not going to be scared. And I think that's what the Steelers need right now to inject a little life and a little bit of spark into this offense, because the offense does need spark, but it needs to take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward. And me and Jeff disagreed slightly on our show yesterday, and the standard is they need to really run the football. This game needs to look like old school Mr. Joe Green football. And that's why I started the show with sending a big shout out to Mr. Joe Green. It needs to look like how it looked before they felt comfortable with Terry Bradshaw letting it rip. They need to lean on this defense, and they need to have the philosophy that a drive that ends in a punt is not a bad thing. And I'm not saying run it twice, once on first, once on second, getting a 3rd and 2, run it again. I'm not saying where they have 50 run attempts in a game and he throws it 10 times. But what I'm saying is, if they could have 50 run attempts and it's working and he throws it 10 times and they win the game, that's what they should do. I'm saying if they can limit Duck's throws, a la like Lamar Jackson on Monday Night Football when they beat the living snuff out of the Rams and 5 of his completions were for touchdowns, if they can limit his exposure using another Mike Tomlinism in terms of describing how a quarterback should play, if they could limit his exposure and still win the football game, that's the way they should do it. He's just not experienced enough, not good enough, not physically good enough to go out and sling it 40-something times, cut the wind, not turn the ball over, and the Steelers win the football game. They have to take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward. Now, that's tough because rightfully so. And you guys are saying it in the live chat. The running backs aren't that good. But the strength of this offensive line and what should be good is the offensive line. This is a game where you have to hang your hat on the offensive line. You've got to pound that rock. White has to get touches, like Andres Ross A said. The counter traps with White. Compliment, the thunder and lightning with White. Benny No Jets, Edmonds. I mean, this has to be a game where this offensive line has to put on its hard hat and say, we're going to go kick A, take names, pound the Browns, and get out of here with a dub. That's it. They've got to pound the Browns. This has to be a pound the Browns on the ground, time of possession game, beat these boys up, field position game. You've got to take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward. And that is, you've got to channel your inner Pittsburgh Steelers if you're this offensive line and go out and pound the Browns. The defense is going to get it done. They're going to beat up that Browns defensive line. And they only had 1 sack in the first contest, and that's largely because of Baker Mayfield being able to get outside the pocket, namely to his right, and make plays. Contain Baker, beat up their offensive line. The Steeler offensive line goes out there, starts mashing, and starts beating people up. And that's how you get this victory on Sunday. So they've got to take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward. Pound the rock. Let me give you Duck's stats for his career. 27 of 40. 318 yards. 68% completion percentage. Average completion of 7.9, 2 TDs, 1 interception, a long of 79 for a rating of 97.7. That's what the Steelers are starting against the Browns. And because of that, you've got to establish the run, pound the rock, force the Browns to commit an extra body to the running game so Duck can have some more clearly defined passing windows and passing opportunities. So play action can be part of this game. So when he does throw the football, he can sling that thing against cover 1 or cover 3 and against one-on-one coverage because the extra safety has to be dropped into the box as an 8th defender to handle the running game. They've got to pound the rock. Unfortunately, they're probably going to not have James Conner available for the game, but they've got to pound the rock. This is an offense that is averaging 19.6 points per game and allowing 19.3 points per game. And some of that is inflated due to the early struggles of the offense before Minkah Fitzpatrick came. It should be like a stat that says, like BM before Minkah, AM after Minkah. That should be the stat when you look at this Steeler defense and its impact. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be a very tough game. That they're really going to have to beat up the Browns and really choke off Hunt and really choke off Chubb and really put it in the game into Mason, not to Mason, into Baker Mayfield's hands. This is going to be a quarterback game. What quarterback is going to play better? But again, like Lawrence Holcomb said, pound the rock. Stop the run, limit the penalties, take deep shots, but pound the rock. They got to pound it and they got to stop it. And they cannot turn the football over. So Andrus Ross A asked me, Lance, you claim to be a coach. How hard is it to get Vance involved in routes that don't include flats? And I want to see post down the middle. It's not something that it's hard to get involved. It's just more so, are they going to be committed to doing it? Are they going to be committed to doing it? I mean, they run some creative route concepts at time, and I've seen him open on film. Are they going to be committed to doing it? Are they going to allow Duck to rip it and throw the football downfield aggressively? But again, all that has to be established through running the football. They've got to pound the rock. And big up to Nap 1963. Thank you for the BM AM, the pre-Minkah defense. And that, again, was an outstanding free agent trade. Or now I was going to say a free agent signing, but it was a trade. Excuse me. Yes, I mean, they got to pound the rock. I mean, as much as I'm happy with putting in Devlin Duck Hodges, I mean, look, they've got to limit his exposure. They cannot put this ball game in his hands. If you go to sleep and you don't watch the game on Sunday, and you wake up on Monday, and Duck Hodges has 35 pass attempts to 40 pass attempts, they lost. If you wake up and Duck has 25 pass attempts to 20 pass attempts, they won the game. So to Lawrence Holcomb's question, how long of a leash do you think Duck has? I think Duck's got a short leash. I think he's got a short leash. I think they're going to give him some things that he does well. They're going to utilize his legs, the ability to move the pocket and roll out, and they're going to limit his exposure. There's going to be some underneath stuff with the occasional deep shot. I think that's how they do it. Big up to Mango Masher. That's a new name in here. Let me see what Mango Masher has to say. I think the key is the passing game to open up the run game. The Browns will try to stack the box from the start. What the Steelers need to do is pass the ball to open up the run game. So I would ask Mango, what type of passes? I hear what he's saying. I just don't feel comfortable with Duck doing that. I mean, the guy that's thrown the ball 40 times. I don't feel comfortable with that. Pound the rock. I don't care if they put an eighth defender in the box. Block it up and run. Because if you can pop it against 8 in the box, you're gonna do some damage. Ronan Gaijin said Duck's ideal splits would be 21 of 30, 245, and 2 TDs, no interceptions. If he does that, they will win the football. They will win the football. Allie Howard, Species 5618, said, Lance, I don't think we can properly evaluate our offense or Fichtner with a stiff at QB. Guys have been open deep. You're probably right. And me and Jeff go back and forth a little bit about it. Fichtner was awesome last year in the red zone. His red zone offense was awesome. Sans the interceptions that Ben Roethlisberger threw. But his red zone offense was awesome last year. My only issue really with Randy Fichtner is the influence at which the quarterback has. Because I never thought that it was prudent with Ben Roethlisberger to throw the ball 40 times a game. I just did not think that was the way to operate. And I don't think it will be the way to operate when Ben comes back next year, especially with this defense, is to try to be that 45 times a game, slinging it all over the field. I don't think that's the way to do it with this defense. I think it has to be a little bit more conservative, and I think you have to really focus on not turning over the football and be more of a run play action team, where the amount of passing attempts for Ben is in the 30s, not in the 40s. Let me jump into a question from Mr. T, Steelers fan 1223. Can you see Mason coming off the bench on Sunday and leading the Steelers to a dramatic victory over the Browns? With this quarterback rotation, I don't envision it, but if it happened, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at all. So Mango Masher asked, do you think this will be a similar game to the Charger game? In some respects. In some respects. But I think what Duck's mentality is, if Duck can see it, Duck will throw it. Whereas with Mason Rudolph, if he saw it, he might not have thrown it. Duck is going to absolutely take shots if he sees it, because Duck is an aggressive player. And so I think you'll see that with Duck. Let me go to Evgeny Crosby. Love that name. In a season in which the offense has totally sucked, I was hoping that we were past the bash Ben Roethlisberger stuff, but I'm not bashing Ben. Come on, Evgeny. I'm not bashing Ben. I'm just saying, when you have a dominant defense, you have to alter the way you play a quarterback. Your focus has to be the preservation of the football and not turning it over and putting your dominant defense into some compromising positions and putting them into some short field situations. I think you can just play football differently when you have a dominant defense. I'm not bashing Ben. Come on, Evgeny. It's Thanksgiving, man. Give me a break. Let me jump into a couple more comments. Steelers fan frenzy with Flip. Wow, that's a heavy hack right there. That's a long name right there. Duck has 8 yards per attempt, 10th of all QBs with 40 pass attempts. Yeah, because he has 41 pass attempts. That's why he qualifies. That's pretty hilarious. I love that. I know that was a joke. You guys are absolutely funny. And I know that was meant to be sarcastic because, yeah, I think Duck has like 41 pass attempts. That was pretty funny. I like that. I like that. Um, I think you're right, Chris Taz 88. The O line is not in sync. But I think they know each other enough to where they will play better because they're familiar with BJ Finney. BJ Finney is an outstanding backup in my opinion, and I think they will be okay. Um, Let me jump into a few more comments. Oh, let me mention this right here before I forget to do it. The super chat feature is in the corner. If you guys want to give a super chat, hit the dollar sign, hit a super chat. Please give to the show if you feel likely to do that or if so inclined to do that. I know all of you guys have got cracked last night for the Black Friday stuff, but if you feel like it, make sure you donate something to the show. We love to bring it to you. And there's a quote that I want to read to you before I close the show about our dedication to it. Big up to Old Baby. Been listening to the podcast after the fact. First time I get to watch live. Big up to you, baby. The baby. I wonder if he can rhyme like the baby. Let me go into a couple more comments. Lamar Garrett, do you think McDonald should be cut and go get Hunter Henry and if they could cut him and get Hunter Henry, they would not do that. They'd probably cut Vinette and go get Hunter Henry, but it's a little more difficult than that. Let me pick up the Snowman. Hey, Snowman, you are the man. And just riddle me this. If you're listening to the program, is YouTube still giving you guys super chat money? But anyway, is it time to give up on Mason Rudolph and draft another quarterback next year? It's not time to give up on Mason Rudolph, but it's never not a bad time to draft a quarterback. Like I said yesterday, they're in a division where the Ravens have their guy. They have the human freak show in Lamar Jackson, who's going to be MVP unless he gets hurt. You got Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, overall number 1 pick of the draft. And presumably, the Bengals are going to move on from Andy Dalton, and Ryan Finley was not the answer, and they're probably going to get Joe Burrow. So you're going to have 3 teams in your division that have their franchise guy moving forward. The Steelers can counter that, I think, with the best quarterback of the division still in Ben Roethlisberger, but that's not your quarterback of the future. If you don't find your quarterback of the future sooner than later, you're going to get your doors beat in. If you're in a division with 3, presumably, I'm just assuming that they'll be good quarterbacks, guys with high pedigree, you're going to get your doors beat in for years to come. And a very good defense is going to be squandered because you have a bad offense. Because of that, they always have to be in identify our next guy mode. And I don't think that Duck nor Mason Rudolph has solidified themselves as the quarterback of the future. So make sure you check out our show from a couple of days ago. Is the Steelers quarterback of the future on the roster? I just want to tease it. Make sure you go check out that show. There's a comment here that's being held for my review. I'm scared when I hit the button. What's going to happen? Well, nothing happened. So let me scroll down to some more questions. There was a question here as I'm trying to go through the live chat. Mr. T Steelers fan 1223 Lance, do you think Jerome Bettis can help us out in the run game on Sunday? I mean, he looked really good now in that Geico commercial. Man, they might need bus, train, airplane, freight, ship. They need all types of transportation to help that running game, but they need to try to establish the running game and get creative in the running game and be committed to it and pound the rock on Sunday. This has to be a run first, established, pound the rock game, play action game. You got to take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward. This has to look like old school Steeler football. You got to pound the rock. Naps 1963 said, agreed, Lance. If there's a quarterback the Steelers are high on, they should draft him. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. They have to take that guy. Dragon Jay-Z said, man, the bus probably had to ice his whole body down after the first take of that commercial. He probably did. Because I know you guys famously know about the story that Bus said, during his last few seasons in Pittsburgh, where basically he'd never practiced. That after a game, he could not walk up the steps until Thursday. And literally, he played on Sunday, got treatment all week, and played on Sunday. That's how he did. Mateo Cecilia said Teddy Bridgewater maybe be an off-season move. Not so much. I don't like Teddy's arm strength. I don't think Teddy can cut the wind outside. And I think Teddy's going to re-sign in New Orleans. I think he's going to be a Saint. I think he's going to be the heir apparent to Drew Brees. In that offense and in the dome, I think Teddy's going to be that guy. And Teddy played great football. Teddy won them 5 games. He's like, I won 5 games and I'm going to free agency. Holla. Let me get into a couple of more questions before we conclude the program. Let me see if I can find a new one. Chris Tasman, 88 Hodge said, if the O-line takes care of Duck, we will be good to go. I agree. And I think Duck is going to play well. I just don't think you should put it in Duck's hands. Ron Steyer said, love the show. Thank you, sir. Love how weird all of you are, but wouldn't be taking it 1 step back, 2 steps forward. We can't afford to take a step less than where we are now. Funny guy. That was pretty good, actually. Let me go through a couple of more. Lance, I don't really see any difference in Terrell Edmonds and Artie Burns. Neither can tackle or cover. I like Terrell Edmonds, but Terrell Edmonds is a stabilizer. And I think he plays well with Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think he does that little stabilizing stuff that allows Minkah Fitzpatrick to do the stuff that he could do. And I'm not really high on Sean Davis. I don't think Sean Davis will be back because I think Cam Sutton does some of the stuff that he does. I mean, I think the only adjustment I would make on their defense is I would play Cam Sutton a little bit more in nickel and Mike Hilton a little bit less, and maybe make Mike Hilton the dime cornerback to play the deep middle. Because I Mike Hilton in coverage, it kind of scares me at times. But let me read this quote before we get out of here. And I want to thank all of you guys on this Black Friday where you guys get your wallets broken. And if you want to break your wallet and donate by hitting the super chat, big up the snowman. But if you don't, I understand, because I know your wallets have absolutely been broken when you went out and got this 4K HD TV that you got. But let me read this quote by Joe Green. When Joe Green was inducted into Canton, Joe Green wrote the following: in Pittsburgh, if you're not at the stadium at 1 on Sunday in the fall, you are in the wrong place. They are always there. Without the fans, it is something different, and we certainly appreciate and love you for that. And you have impacted my life because you are important. And I wanted to just say that before we conclude the show. And that's what I want to say to all of you guys, is that you guys are important because you have impacted my life. And without you guys listening to these live chats, without you guys supporting BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, it just would be different. It would be very different for me. This is a very important part of my life. You guys are important to me. And I love doing the shows, and this is why we do it. Because in Pittsburgh, if you are not at the stadium on 1 on Sunday in the fall, you're in the wrong place. And you guys are not in the wrong place because you guys are online, listening to me, listening to my thoughts, supporting Jeff, supporting Brian Anthony Davis, supporting Dave Schofield, who's bad, supporting Tony Defio, supporting the website. And that's why we love you guys. And with that, we're going to conclude the program. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.